It was a busy morning, a nurse recalls, approximately 8:30 a.m., when an elderly gentleman in his 80s arrived to have stitches removed from his thumb. He stated that he was in a hurry and that he had an appointment at 9 a.m. I had him take a seat, knowing it would be over an hour before someone would be able to see him. I saw him looking at his watch and decided, since I was not busy with another patient, I would evaluate his wound. It was well healed, so I talked to one of the doctors, got the needed supplies to remove his sutures, and redressed his wound. I asked him if he had a doctor's appointment this morning, as he was in such a hurry. The gentleman told me no. He needed, he said, to go to the nursing home to eat breakfast with his wife. He told me that she had been there for quite some time and had Alzheimer's. I asked if she would be worried if he were late. He replied that she no longer knew who he was and hadn't recognized him in 5 years. And you still go every morning, even though she doesn't know who you are? He smiled. She doesn't know me, but I still know who she is. And he obviously knew who he was. He knew what it meant to make a covenant with another person, and he appreciated the importance of a vow. The Torah teaches, if a man takes a vow, he shall not desecrate his word. Whatever issues from his mouth, he shall do. The promises we make define us as human beings. This is why we began our liturgy this evening with the chanting of Kol Nidre, which means all our vows. It might seem strange to begin our most sacred day with what seems to be a technical formula, asking for the annulment of promises yet unfulfilled, either because we exaggerated what we might be able to do, or simply because the promise has slipped our mind. But in beginning Yom Kippur in this fashion, Judaism reminds us that we are what we say we will do. The promises we annul with the recitation of Kol Nidre are not those enforceable by law. These are not mortgage contracts or credit card obligations. The promises we dissolve are the forgotten commitments we have made to others and to ourselves. Kol Nidre, with its haunting tones, should also haunt us as we contemplate our unfulfilled vows and any promises we have casually uttered but never intended to fulfill. A story is told about a wealthy oil tycoon on his deathbed. The man's pastor talked of God's healing power. "Pastor," he gasped, "if God heals me, I'll give the church $1 million. The man got better, and within a few short weeks was out of the hospital. Sometime later, he and the pastor saw each other on the street. "You know," the pastor said, "when you were in the hospital dying, you promised to give the church $1 million if you got well. We haven't got it yet." "Did I say that?" the tycoon asked. "I guess that goes to show how sick I really was." Sometimes we lack the power to fulfill what we have promised, a new dependency on others, a change in our own physical capabilities. But how many of our promises are willfully forgotten? How many times do we excuse ourselves for forgetting what we deem as smaller and less significant promises? We have heard magicians utter the word abracadabra just before performing their trick. If we examine the etymology of this word, some suggest that it is derived from the Aramaic phrase avracadabra, which means it will be created with my words. In effect, the magician is promising us that what happens next on stage will occur because of the promise that has been made to the audience. Our lives should be no different. There is nothing magical about fulfilling our promises. If we say it, it should be created. And if it can't be created, it shouldn't be said. You know the promises we make and then break. We will eat less and exercise more. We will speak less and listen more. Let's do lunch. And the list of meaningless promises is endless. Kol Nidre is concerned about these promises, to be sure, but much more. In the introduction of his book entitled The Road to Character, columnist David Brooks differentiates between what he calls resume virtues and eulogy virtues. Brooks writes, "The resume virtues are the ones you list on your resume, the skills that you bring to the job market and that contribute to external success. The eulogy virtues are deeper. They're the virtues that get talked about at your funeral, the ones that exist at the core of your being. Whether you are kind, brave, honest, or faithful, what kind of relationships you formed." If we are honest with ourselves, we tend to be scrupulous in fulfilling the resume virtues, the promises we make that ensure our economic well-being and security. But are we as scrupulous with the eulogy virtues? When we have time, we will become more kind, we say to ourselves. When I'm no longer working, we convince ourselves, I will evolve into the person I know I should be. But now I'm in business, and it's not feasible to be completely honest in that cutthroat environment. I'll be braver, we say to ourselves, when it's practical. But right now, who has time for emotional and moral courage? And naturally, there will be time tomorrow to be faithful, to be true to ourselves, to be loyal to our friends, to be more attentive to family members whose needs seem never ending. But right now, it's just not realistic. Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav once told his disciples, if you are not going to be better tomorrow, than you were today, then what need have you for tomorrow? Why even have Yom Kippur if we are not committed to a better tomorrow? We make promises every day that we have every intention of honoring. We will be there for a work commitment. We will have the product delivered on time. We will see that client. These promises are important, but when we measure the value and the impact of our lives, are they more important than the promises we as human beings make to be kind, brave, honest, and faithful? The Talmud relates a rather unusual story about Rav Rehumi, who was immersed in his studies. He was accustomed to return home every year on Kol Nidre. One day, he was engrossed in studying, and so he remained in the study hall and did not go home. His wife was expecting him that day and continually said to herself, "Now he is coming. Now he is coming." But he did not come. She was distressed by this, and a tear fell from her eye. At that exact moment, Rav Rehumi was sitting on the roof. The roof collapsed under him, and he died. Seems like such a harsh and seemingly inappropriate punishment for studying and not returning home to his wife. But the Talmud uses this story to teach an important point. Where is it written that the requirements of work are more pressing than matters of family? Why do we take an active role in neglecting promises like kindness, bravery, honesty, and faithfulness, virtues that cannot be measured by a pie chart or bottom line? Choose life, the Torah admonishes us, now, not when the business deal has been completed, or when the house is paid off, or when the kids go away to college. Now, this minute and every single day. I have been with many people in their last days of life. I have heard many express regrets they have, but people do not lament failed business deals, promotions not received, and good investments not recognized. What do they regret? Their failures in kindness, bravery, honesty, and faithfulness. Who is not busy? Who is not preoccupied with the resume virtues? But the symbolism of death permeating Yom Kippur, the fasting, the denial of pleasure. This day reminds us that the real regrets we will have at the end will be in failing to have honored the eulogy virtues, the promises we have made to others and ourselves to be kind, brave, honest, and faithful. Are these not the real virtues that define us as human beings and the personal characteristics others are most likely to remember about us? The renowned Rabbi Maurice Lamb writes that the rabbis of the Talmud considered kindness to be one of the three distinguishing marks of the Jew. Lest we think that kindness means writing a check to a Jewish charity, the rabbis disabuse us of such an erroneous conclusion. The Talmud tells us the difference between kindness and charity. Charity is done with money. Kindness can be either with one's person or one's money. Charity is for the poor. Kindness can be done for either the poor or the rich. Charity is for the living. Kindness can be done for the living or the dead. And let me add, charity is performed sometimes. Often, when we are confronted with the need, but acts of kindness should be performed all the time with every human encounter. Do we offer cheer to the dejected? Do we greet even those we dislike with a warm smile? Have we imparted hope to those who are mourning or themselves are dealing with illness or infirmity? Shall we wait until we achieve financial security to begin being kind? Is our kindness reserved only for our workplace colleagues and our employers? Do what is right and good in the sight of the Lord, teaches the Torah. If kindness has been absent from our lives, if we make it a point to walk away instead of walking towards someone in emotional distress, if we leave a human situation with more strife and despair than we found it, then this day demands we fulfill the promise to be more kind. There is no better exercise for your heart, wrote radio host Bernard Meltzer, than reaching down and helping to lift someone up. How many of us have been brave? Most of us, fortunately, will never be tried on a battlefield. But what about the bravery required as we navigate the minefields of everyday life? Do we stand up for our convictions? Do we have the courage to conquer bad habits and the bravery to diminish the impulses that drive us to lift ourselves up at the expense of others? How many of us have the courage to tell a friend to stop gossiping? How many of us stand up and speak out when the anti-Semite lashes out at us? It is not difficult to be brave when the words we speak about an issue are spoken by everyone around us. But we uphold our promise to be brave when we take the more difficult path and speak the words that others would rather not hear. Moral and emotional bravery happens when what we know we would like to be prevails over what is easier and more convenient. A Yiddish proverb says it beautifully. Money lost, nothing lost. Courage lost, everything lost. And how are we doing in the realm of honesty? Most of us are not liars. But how honest are we in matters seemingly small and insignificant? How often do we make a promise to one of our friends, telling them that they can count on us for dinner on a certain night, but cancel when something better or someone more important comes along? Is this honesty? How often do we make excuses for behavior that harmed a relationship, diminishing our role in what is now an irreparable rift? Is that honesty? How many utter an "I am sorry" to a spouse when we truly believe we are right, just to avoid conflict? And how many of us refuse to utter an "I am sorry" when we are wrong? And when we are wrong, make our apology conditional by prefacing it with the word "perhaps." Honesty is about integrity. It is about transparency, acting without hidden agendas. We read in the Yom Kippur afternoon service about the Jewish requirement to use honest weights and measures in our business dealings. We should also use honest weights and measures in our personal lives. If we make a vow to be honest, that intention should permeate every act and interaction, those we deem significant and those we relegate to the category of trivial. Judaism does not ask us to be perfect, just honest. Finally, being faithful, loyal. What relationship can endure without this innate trust, without the understanding that the other person will be there for us? Have we upheld our promises as spouses, as children, as parents and siblings? Being with the other person, even when physical distance separates us, feeling their pain and reveling in their joy, feeling free with a friend to discuss subjects that are not easily discussable, and doing so without accusing or making the other person feel inadequate, standing side by side with another person, especially when their path takes them in a direction you prefer not to travel. This is the faithfulness necessary for vibrant relationships. When Moses is chastised by Aaron and Miriam, God answers their false charges with these words: Bechol beiti ne'eman hu. In all my house, he is the most faithful. To be faithful in our homes, with those we claim to love most deeply. If that promise has had to be voided with the recitation of Kol Nidre, then today provides us with the opportunity to make tomorrow better. Over the years, I have shared this story with some of you about the first funeral at which I officiated. I was nervous as I exited my car in the driveway at the home of the new widow, What would I say to this grieving woman? What words of consolation could I offer? I knocked at the door. Mrs. So-and-so, I'm Rabbi Weinstein. I'm so sorry about the loss of your husband. Please accept my condolences. The woman looked at me. Rabbi, I'm glad the son of a, you can fill in the blank, is dead. I must have had an astonished look on my face, which led her to elaborate. He was loved at work and in the community and by his employees and colleagues. But at home, he was abusive verbally to me and our children. He was cruel, callous, and heartless. I won't miss him. It is easy to uphold resume virtues, the promises we have made to our employers, to those we need for our financial survival and physical security. How are we doing with the eulogy virtues, with the promises we have made to be kind, brave, honest, and faithful?